Hello, you sexually aroused adult Beyblade enthusiasts. Jim Sterling here, and this is Gravity Rush 2, starring Kat, everybody's favourite person who fools about the place a bit. This is the sequel to Gravity Rush, which started life on the PlayStation Vita, but of course the PlayStation Vita is a decaying husk, so Sony decided to move the whole thing over, just call it off, forget about the portable thing. So I don't even think Sony remembers what a PS Vita is, but it doesn't really matter in this case. I thought it was a little bit sad when Tearaway ended up as a PS4 game. Not because I don't think Tearaway doesn't deserve to reach as big an audience as possible, but it was a little bit of a shame to see a really, really good PS Vita game end up on a console and further undermine the point of the Vita's existence. And that kind of happened here, except I feel personally Gravity Rush played better on a console. The way the game's set up, it just plays better with a controller as opposed to a more limited handheld interface. That's just me, but I found the game more accurate in combat and just generally nicer to control when I played Gravity Rush Remastered last year. And Gravity Rush 2 is basically the same thing. It follows the original Gravity Rush very closely. It's really stuck to that blueprint. Any problems one might have had with the first game, carry over to this one. Any praise one might have had of the first game, carry over to this one. And the game does do some things that are better, and some things that are, I'd say, disappointing when you consider the fact they really ought to have been fixed in between games. But to talk about the positives, the world of Gravity Rush 2 is way better than the world in the first one. And the first one had, the town of Hexaville was fun to explore, but Baga, or Baga Village, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but basically the main hub world of Gravity Rush 2 is wonderfully designed. The big maps and the verticality of it are really nice. There are various series of islands that are in tiers. So the middle tier is sort of your main hub world with your marketplace and kind of your lively activities and your people and everything. And the higher you go, the richer the people are. And the lower you go, the closer you get to sort of the slums where all the basically the poor people of this game's society live. And the game actually, story-wise, talks a lot about class, sort of, what's the word, animosity? I suppose I was going to say class warfare. Although that's actually, I mean, considering we're just looking at guards right now who are upholding the status quo of this game's world, toting machine guns and whatnot, it is quite literal class warfare as well. But anyway, Kat's something of a woman of the people in this game, more so than in the first one, as she takes it to the ruling class. And I've got one main mission and another bit of a main mission that I'm showing here today from the game's second chapter. Spoilers, obviously, I should have said that a little earlier, but obviously the game is out. It's not out for a week yet, is it? So if you're watching this, obviously you're going to see content that isn't available yet. So just be warned. No major plot points to worry about, but obviously some of the if you want to go into the story completely fresh, then why are you still watching this? Fuck off. But the rest of you, very, very welcome. And those who I just told to fuck off, of course, are very, very welcome. It's just, I'm doing this for your own good. The game doesn't just feature combat missions. I'm showing off combat for the most part with this one. I showed a little bit of between mission exploration at the beginning. There's still plenty of that, if you remember that from Gravity Rush. Those little purple crystals that are known as ore, hidden everywhere, underneath floating islands, at the top of very tall buildings, in little crevices, all over the place. You could spend hours just getting the ore, which you can use to level up Kat's abilities and whatnot. So I'm actually doing this not in the most efficient way. I find the gravity kicks frustrating and fun. It's odd, because I love using them, except when they don't work, which can happen often, because the game's targeting can leave a lot to be desired. I'm doing that was a special move. she auto-targets and stuff after, you know, acquiring enough stuff for a meter. You know how video games work. Well, I'm explaining the basics. Anyway, in almost every situation with this game, the quickest, most efficient, best way of dealing with almost anything is to just spam the circle button over and over again while looking in the direction of whatever it is you want to kill. More than the first game, it seems, the gravity kick is insufficient to deal with many enemy types, whereas using the stasis field, which is basically you press circle, it draws nearby objects towards Cat, and then you press it again and it flings the objects towards stuff. So basically it's this game's version of shooting, and especially against these guys, which I actually found out shortly after this mission. These guys are really susceptible to it, just general soldiery, because you can pick up people, and you can pick up enemies, like just regular enemies, with no issue whatsoever. So these guys, I can just pick them. I could have picked all 3 of them up and then just flung them off the side. Or you can pick guys up and fling them at other guys, you know. So I'm actually doing this, I'm making things harder for myself here because I got so used to using the gravity kick in the first game, and I never really used the stasis field all that much. Perhaps I should have in the first game as well, but the enemy types here in this one particularly encouraged me to use the stasis field a lot, which is fine, but it does kind of undermine a lot of the game's unique power set, because you're just running around spamming a button to shoot stuff. It starts to feel a bit more like a vanilla shooter, whereas this stuff is kind of unique. And like I said, when you land a kick, when you're floating up in the air and then you target an enemy and then you just woof towards them, and it lands, like, it's really satisfying. It's why I use it as much as I do. But then many other times, especially in boss fights, I find you'll miss, and some enemies are designed to dodge and duck and weave so that you can't keep spamming the gravity kick on them. But God, there's nothing... Like, it's like when you're about to sneeze and then something fucks it up and you can't sneeze. That's what gravity kicks are like when they can't land. And there's a lot of that, like, fiddly control-wise stuff. Because it's an unusual power. Obviously, you're falling throughout the entire game. You fall upwards, you fall sideways, you're not actually flying. So by its very nature, it's a little, I don't want to say cumbersome, but it's certainly there we go, that was some of the hitting circle to fire at things. For the most part, in the early stages of the game, I was just using it against bosses, because it was safer to... Well, I say bosses, this isn't technically a boss because it turns up in a fairly mookish capacity, but any big stuff, I was just picking stuff up. It was much quicker than... It was quicker and safer than physical, you know, melee attacks. But they, that basically screwdriver attack, which isn't what it's called, but can't remember what it's called. Really efficient way of dealing with things. There are other gravity styles. That's the other big change they've made to this game. This regular style that we're fighting with here is practically identical to the first game. They haven't really altered much there, but in the later chapter of the game, which I cannot stream for you today per embargo, you can get the Lunar Style, which is basically makes Cat very light. She can warp toward enemies, which is a safer and a little bit more of an accurate way of using a gravity kick. And you can hold down the jump button and perform like big sort of moon jumps and stuff. It's pretty cool. And then you get Jupiter Style, which is basically the opposite, which is Cat being very weighty. Everything she does feels like it's got a heavy impact to it. You can slam into the ground for area of effect attacks, that sort of stuff. Both of those are interesting. But despite its flaws, the normal style remains just well-rounded enough to deal with almost every enemy efficiently. There are highly specialised cases where Lunar and Jupiter are more useful, but for the most part I didn't mess around with them too much. They are interesting, but they just didn't quite round them out the same way they did with Cat's original power set. So that's good. Hope I didn't come across too rambly there. As always with PS4, or as is usually the case with PS4 games, this is pre-recorded footage that I just got with the share function, because why not? This was being played on a regular PS4. I bought a PS4 Pro over the weekend, actually. I played the last few missions on the PS4 Pro. I bring that up because someone on Twitter asked how it ran on the regular PS4, and it ran fine. I didn't notice any problems. Apparently the demo didn't work too hot on vanilla PS4s, and I never played the demo. Running on the Pro was fine. You know, that seemed just dandy. You know. Then you see, it's all set up the same way as the original, with its comic book story, moments in between, action. I could have just said storyboard dialogue there. Could have really truncated that sentence. That's the problem when you're talking scriptless and you're a rambling moron of a person like I am. Anyway, what I mean to say is, I quite like the game. I was fairly lukewarm about Gravity Rush when I first played it in, what was it, 2012 now? It's a long time. It doesn't feel that long ago. But yeah, I was still at Destructoid at the time. My original review was not popular among Sony's more dedicated fans. Because as I said, I was quite critical of it. You know, I didn't give it a terrible score. Unless, of course, you're one of Sony's dedicated fans, in which case anything below a 9 or a 10 would be completely unacceptable. But I was on towards the lowest end of the spectrum, score-wise. I found a lot of it just uncomfortable and unenjoyable on the Vita. And when Remastered came out, I bumped my score up because it just clicked with me way better on the home console. And yeah, the way I felt about Gravity Rush is pretty much the way I feel about this one. It's a good game. It has some noticeable issues. You know, I've talked about some of the accuracy with attacks. Oh, I was just showing off the photo mode here for you, because I figured I was going to be hitting the share button after this. So you can change costumes as with the first game, and you can do little emotes and take photos. Because apparently this generation is just the generation of games in which you can take selfies. And yeah, I know like Wind Waker had stuff like that way back in the day, and there have been plenty of games with photography. But for some reason lately, just video games are on that selfie kick. With this, Watch Dogs, Dead Rising 4, oh, what was it? There's another one as well. What was the other one? Watch Dogs 2? There's some other game where you can, you know, loads of photos and selfies and stuff. And another one, I think. There's loads. And there'll probably be even more this year, because it's just a hot new thing I've noticed. So expect a lot more photography modes in games. You know. Whatever you may think of that. I don't hugely care for it. I'm not against it. I'm not... You know, I could take or leave it. It's like fishing mini-games. I could take or leave them. I don't... As long as it's not shit and I'm being forced to do it. This game forces you to use the camera a fair few times, but it's quick and easy to use. And it does some clever things with... like showing you photos, like users can do it. They can take photos of treasure chests and upload photos of the locations, and people can use the surroundings in the photo to pinpoint the treasure chest. There's some neat little indirect online functionality with this game. Gives it a little sense of dynamism and social, not networking, but social gaming, I suppose, is a decent enough term to use. See, this boss here, again, stasis projectiles, I would later find, because this enemy comes up a couple times, easier. Just easier. Here we go, look, you're going to fling some stuff, and they're just accurate, quicker. I just landed 3 shots on that thing. But anyway, it's nearly done, and the video's nearly over, and I didn't even get around to saying what I was going to say about mission variety, which is another thing the game kind of lacks in. So much, like, it's a game about gravity manipulation. There's so much potential there, but so many missions, especially side missions, are all like memory games and triangulation and just running around talking. It just seems like a waste of the power set. But anyway, you read the full review. It's on thejumposition.com. We're gonna wrap this up. We've just had Cat and Raven just take the shit to a robot. Goodbye.